Did you ever have a dream come true? Not in the sense of a little coincidental, I dreamed about this person and then they called me 3 days later sort of way, but a big, bold, audacious dream that you held in your heart for a long time and that finally, against all the odds, came to pass. When big dreams come true, they're usually better than you could have imagined, and also a whole lot more complicated too. In the middle of the 20th century, in the shadow of the worst tragedy in Jewish history, one of our greatest dreams came true. It was the dream of 2,000 years to once again be a free people in the land of Israel. The Jewish people's relationship with the land of Israel goes back to our very beginning, when Abraham and Sarah were told to pick up and leave everything and move to a land that God would show them. They arrived in the land with nothing, but there they established a family, and through that family they passed down this covenantal promise that continues to be at the heart of Judaism to this day. For more than 3 millennia, this little piece of ground has been central to our story, even while most of us, for most of that time, never had the opportunity to even lay eyes on it. In fact, in the vast span of Jewish history, we've only had control of this land for less than 6 centuries. For 400 years under various biblical kings and queens, another 100 years under the Maccabees, and for the last 72 years and counting since the establishment of the modern state of Israel. For the rest of that time, the land of Israel was under the control of others: Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Muslims, Crusaders, Turks, and the British, just to name some. The dream of national restoration was just that, a dream. Something that God would accomplish with the coming of the Messiah, whenever that would take place. But wherever we lived in the world, when it came time to pray, we still stood and faced toward the place where the temple once was. And we ended our Passover Seders with the same words, L'shana haba'ah b'Yerushalayim. Next year, let's do this in Jerusalem. We waited and we hoped and we prayed and we waited some more. And then in the mid-19th century, a small group of Jews in Europe who'd imbibed a Western Enlightenment mentality started to ask a question that, up until then, no one had dared to ask out loud. What if we could stop waiting for God to bring us back? What if we could make our own dreams come true? This idea, which they called Zionism, was rejected by most Jews out of hand. For the new Reform Jews of Europe and America, Zionism ran directly contrary to their goal of getting acceptance in the lands in which they lived. And for more traditional Jews, this was heresy, plain and simple. God would take us back to our land on God's timeline, not ours. And yet, this little group of thinkers and activists and writers persisted and grew and gained more and more influence. An unlikely leader emerged, a Hungarian-born journalist and pretty secular Jew who hadn't set foot in a synagogue since his bar mitzvah, named Theodor Herzl. Herzl was converted to the Zionist cause when he covered the Dreyfus trial in France, in which a French Jewish military captain was convicted on trumped-up charges brought by those who felt this Jew had risen above his proper place. Herzl became convinced that Jews would never be fully welcomed in Europe, that try as we might to assimilate, we would always be seen as the other. Herzl's most famous phrase, written in his book Alt Neuland, The Old New Land, summed up the Zionist vision. Im tirtzu ein zo agada. If you will it, it is not just a dream. By the end of the 19th century, conditions for many Jews, particularly in Eastern Europe, had taken a severe turn for the worse. While most of those fleeing persecution headed for America, a growing number took up the Zionist cause and moved to the land of Israel, then under the control of the Ottoman Turks. Wealthy Jewish philanthropists in Europe helped buy up large tracts of land on which these new immigrants founded farming communities, towns, and on an empty beach near the ancient port city of Jaffa in 1909, the city of Tel Aviv. After World War I, the Ottomans were out, and the British were in control of the land of Israel. While the British signaled an openness to establishing a Jewish state, decades passed with little progress toward that goal. Only after World War II and the revelation of the monumental crime of the Holocaust did world opinions shift in favor of the Zionist cause. In November 1947, the newly established United Nations voted to split British Palestine into two countries, one for Arabs and one for Jews. The deal was set to go into effect 6 months later, on May 15th, 1948. May 15th, however, was Shabbat. And even though few of the founders of the State of Israel were particularly observant themselves, it just seemed wrong to found the state on the holy day of rest. So Friday, late afternoon, May 14th, in an art gallery in Tel Aviv, under a portrait of Theodor Herzl, the leadership of the Zionist movement gathered and read out a Declaration of Independence, announcing to the world the rebirth of Jewish sovereignty in our own land for the first time in 2 millennia. After that declaration, they stood together for a new national anthem, based on a poem by Naftali Hirsch Imber called Hatikva, the Hope. It ends with the words, "Our hope is not yet lost," the hope of 2,000 years to be a free people in our land, the land of Zion and of Jerusalem. A great dream had come true, and it has been more glorious than we could have imagined. Israel today is a thriving, amazing country, a haven for Jews from around the world, a center of technological and medical innovation, a hub of artistic, literary, and cultural creativity, and a proud, if somewhat chaotic, democracy in a really tough neighborhood. It's my favorite place in the whole world to travel. I love the way the afternoon sunlight turns Jerusalem golden, and the warm waters of the Mediterranean, and the smell of spices in the markets, and the sense that there is layer upon layer upon layer of history everywhere you step. That great dream, though, has also been more complicated than we could have imagined. Israel faces deep political and social divisions, an ongoing internal conflict over religion's role in public life, and the morally confounding and seemingly intractable question of how to peacefully coexist alongside the Palestinians, who also have a claim to this land as their homeland. The great Rav Avraham Yitzhak Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, once wrote, "Halamot gedolot yesodei haolam hem." Great dreams establish new worlds. He saw the truth of that statement in his lifetime, before his very eyes. Rav Kook, however, primarily viewed the state of Israel as a miracle brought about by God. I think it's a miracle brought about by us. The founders of the state of Israel made the bold decision to stop waiting for a Messiah to solve their problems, and to believe that they had the power to realize their own dreams on earth. What they created, like all human creations, is still highly imperfect. It is a work in progress. But it's also a remarkable testament to the truth of Herzl's famous words. If you will it and work for it, it need not be just a dream.
Yay, nay,